Speaking of context and history, we're joined by Professor Phil Goduti of Quinnipiac. Thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here tonight.
And what strikes you about looking big picture about the national election, the close race that we're seeing? Images of what year, and we're both history majors in college, so don't hold back on on
Pick
historic.
Any year. Pick any year. We're ready. Ready.
Excellent.
What comes to mind?
Well, I think today is it's going to continue to be a historic day right up until the very end. We have probably it's projected to be the most people to vote in any election, which that in itself is historic. To say nothing of the fact that we're voting amidst a major national crisis, not only with the pandemic, but also with the economy and with so many uncertain things in our future. I do think it's very similar to two elections kept coming to mind today. One in 1864, where Abraham Lincoln was, running for re-election amidst the Civil War, and even he himself didn't think that he was going to win re-election against McClellan. And he had prepared his cabinet to make that transition over so they can come to some conclusion on the Civil War. And then, of course, again, in 1932, it wasn't quite the height of the Great Depression, but it was on its way to getting to the height of the Great Depression, where Americans came out and voted for new leadership in that election. And I think what we see in those situations and what we're seeing today is a level of American resolve. That despite the fact that there's this major pandemic and despite the fact that there's all this uncertainty, they're still coming to the polls and they are still wanting to be heard.
Well, Connecticut stuck with Abraham Lincoln in 1864 and also Herbert Hoover over FDR in 1932. So we have an unusual voting history here.
We do have an unusual voting history, and that's actually come up in the classroom more than once over the years.
This state was so Republican for so many years, was it not?
Yes. This state had a very strong Republican streak, if you will, when it came to voting in national elections. And we're not Texas, we're not Florida, we don't hold as many electoral votes, but it's still significant and still says something about the state and its own history. And in the last few elections, you have seen that turn to a solid blue state. But if memory serves, it was still rather close. I mean, a little too close than we expected in the last election when it came between Trump and Hillary Clinton. At least we didn't expect it to be as close as it was. So I think tonight is really representative of just how close this election truly is. And it does say a lot about what's going on in this country and what the people are hoping can become with the new leadership or with the current leadership.
Can a close election be a realignment election?
It's funny you ask that. That's a question that actually came up in one of the classes. When you have a close election, when it's not a mandate per se, like when you look at President Barack Obama, he has two very clear mandates where he won overwhelmingly in 2008 with over 10 million of the popular vote, more than John McCain. But then you take someone like George W. Bush, who was just 8 years prior, who did not have a mandate, and he was confronted with a great deal of with 9/11, with a lot of major moments within American history that we needed strong leadership. And I think that's an interesting question, because when you have close elections, it's and those close elections end up turning into major moments in history. Think of John Kennedy, actually, right, where in 1960, there was only 120,000 votes different between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. And think of the stuff that he confronted when he was in the White House. And he's often seen as, he's often polled by a lot of Americans as one of the greatest American presidents, at least in the top 5 usually, by most people. So I think it's a great question, and I think history has taught us that even in the close elections, history has a way of confronting you with issues, and you just have to. I don't know if I'd call it a realignment, but it just sort of has its way of working out.
All right. Well, we will watch more tonight and in the tumultuous days that follow.
Absolutely, absolutely. It should be exciting.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.